Welcome back, everybody, to the Really Healed podcast. I'm your host, Richard the Mouse Williams, founder of Really Healed, trauma informed coach, and someone who believes that real healing isn't a destination, it's a decision you make over and over again. Today's guest is somebody I've genuinely been so looking forward to sitting down with. She's a trauma specialist. She is a recovery coach with over 22 years of experience, a survivor who turned her own pain into the most distinctive approaches to hit the trauma world. So she works with professionals, entrepreneurial women and men as well, obviously, to move them out of survival mode and into the lives that they actually reflect who they are within themselves. And she does it without asking them endlessly to relive the past. She is the creator of Untriggered Women, Trauma Transformation System. She's been featured across major media outlets right throughout the USA and further afield, and she has a story that will stop you in your tracks. So, that being said, Mia, thank you so much and welcome to the Really Healed podcast. Good to have you.
Wow, Richard, what an introduction. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Really looking forward to our conversation today.
Good stuff. Well, I'll jump straight in. So, for anyone meeting you for the first time today, can you give us a bit of your background and what led you into the work that you do today?
Sure. Thank you. My background in education is in mental health. I worked in psychiatric clinics, and what I found is everything I was teaching people just like me wasn't working. And I launched out into my own. I always had my own thing going on because, income, and I capped out at my profession in the clinic. So to supplement, I did counseling in my spare time. And what I found was my relationship, my connection with people, and doing it with my own approach of what has worked for me was more effective than what I was taught to do with other people. And so for the last, it'll be 23 years in July, the last 23 years, I have been not only on my own recovery journey as a survivor, but I have helped so many men and women. Is relationship trauma, interpersonal trauma, childhood, domestic violence, narcissistic parents, and child abuse, neglect, and abandonment, of course, go in there. But I also have helped 9/11 survivors, combat veterans, and a slew of emergency first responders. That's a really big place, that space that I work in. A little bit different. There's a lot of talk about regulating the nervous system. That science has changed the trauma field. It absolutely has. However, what I have found is there is a lot of hyper focus on getting out of the emotional experience to regulate the body. And then it leaves the mind continuing these patterns, and that gets ignored. So we can't treat the body and the mind as separate anymore, like we were taught
No.
probably when we were
Yeah.
younger. They're not
Uh-huh.
separate. It's a system. So I work within that mind body connection to help survivors feel safe in their own skin, and then also to prepare the mind for the deeper work, the belief system that needs to be restructured, the thoughts that need to be addressed, because those things, as we know, create energy, which create our lives. That's it in a nutshell. I've seen so many people just transform their lives. I have transformed my own life. The reason I got into this is honestly, Richard, desperation. I was suicidal. I've survived 3 attempts of my own of suicide. The thing that saved me was not wanting to leave my children behind with that memory. And after that, I got into recovery for alcohol and drug addiction, and on my way to trauma recovery. And I have tried everything for my trauma that was not effective before I developed this.
So there's a lot of coaches out there, Mia, that they keep their personal story at arm's length. They reference it, but they don't lean into it. And you don't do that. Why do you think that is? Both
Well,
why do you think they don't, and why do you think you do and do? What do you think the benefit of that is? Because we have a lot of similarities there. When you were speaking there for a minute, I was like, why didn't I find this lady 20 years ago? Yeah. So why do you think that that makes a difference, or do you?
I do. I absolutely do. In the clinical environment, practitioners are discouraged against personal self disclosure. And the reason that they teach us that is because it can literally hijack the patient's ability to be present for themselves. They will turn into taking care of the practitioner. So there needs to be a very delicate way of bringing up a shared personal experience. It needs to be pertinent, first of all, to the patient or client's own personal journey of healing. And it needs to be encapsulated in a way where it doesn't trigger that person into self abandonment. So, this is a great practice in the clinical environment. However, what I have found is me sitting behind a desk and acting like I have it all together and not being able to share, hey, I know what it's like to get a black eye from the man who says he loves you. I know what it's like to be touched when you're a little person and you have nobody to protect you. I know what it's like to be homeless, alone, and with children. I know what it's like to experience poverty. I know what it's like to experience self doubt so enveloping that you want to die. You really think that that's a solution. When I was sitting on a curb with a woman who was suicidal at my old clinic, she wrote a note to her daughter that she was going to give her after she killed herself that day. And instead of reporting her to lock her up, I took her in the back, sat on a curb, talked her out of it. And then we burned that note together. And that woman is still alive today and thriving. That's 15 years later because of personal self disclosure. It's changed.
Mm.
The connection is different. When you tell me you can see through my eyes, there's a certain level of trust that cannot come from book knowledge alone. I can't hear somebody tell me that I need to do these certain things to change my situation if they have not walked in my moccasins.
Uh,
If they haven't walked in my
yeah.
shoes, I can't hear that. And then what it implies is I'm not doing something right. I don't have a valid experience. So it's therefore my ears, my brain will hear it's my fault. It's my fault that I've survived this. It's my fault that I'm in this situation now. It's my fault that I can't get out of this loop now. And that will re-traumatize a client or a patient. So personal self-disclosure done done correctly. I do need to add that for everybody listening. It has to be done a certain way, will help the connection and the space to feel safe for whoever it is that we're working with.
Yeah, that's so very true. I love those powerful moments, when you can get somebody to turn something around. It's the piece, I suppose, that keeps us doing the work that we do. I wanted to ask you around, trauma has become a buzzword nearly. 20 years ago, the word trauma wasn't really put out there. We used lots of different descriptions for it, but it was never used as much as it is today, certainly anyway. And that being said, there's the huge shift in awareness around trauma. And, you touched on a few pieces there, the nervous system in recent years. We've had the polyvagal theory, somatic work, nervous system regulation. It's everywhere. It's all over the place at the moment. And yet, there are still people that are stuck. And what do you think is the missing piece in all of that? What do you think that it is that people aren't getting?
Really good question. You're absolutely right. Trauma is a buzzword. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide. I'm in California, you're in Ireland, and we're both coaches in similar
Mm,
spaces. And it's a global issue. It's a human epidemic, for sure. It's very rare that a person grows up and doesn't have something that has happened in their life that has caused a traumatic imprint that will inject itself into their now experience or their future lives. And there's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately. Social media is also relied upon too heavily for self-help. And just like when we do research for science, we need to make sure that the sources are credible. Every coach may have an experience, but their motivations may not be the same. I like to keep my approach very simple in order to dispel or to cut through a lot of the noise about what do I do. But the biggest thing that I think holds people back is when they believe that they are broken, that they're a problem that needs to be somehow fixed, instead of embracing this thing, the stuff that we live with in a way that is accurate, meaning there are parts of trauma that are always going to be with me. If I hear a sudden noise, I am going to startle. That's never going to be eradicated. And that's the best example that I have, that the body and mind connection that has occurred somewhere along the line when I was younger, hearing doors slam. If I hear that today, it's still going to happen. Now, can I do EFT tapping to stop that? I've tried it. No. Can I do mind shifting and mindset work to say, okay, it's a slam door? Yes, but it won't make my body not jump. So
Mm.
some of these things are lived with and dealt with and coped with instead of eradicated. And I think that because of what's happening now in the trauma space, there's a lot of fixing and a lot of integrating.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of people looking for the magic wand as well, you know. You call yourself a trauma healer. I'm here, heal me. You know, they think they can just sit there and do nothing in the background. If only. Wishful thinking. You use a phrase, felt safety is the beginning, not the finish line. Can you unpack that a little bit for me and what you mean by that and what actually comes after it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Richard, for bringing that up. But I actually did not coin that term. That term was coined by a couple different, authors. I picked it up on my journey. Don't ask me to cite them right now because I
I
cannot.
won't tell anybody. We'll
I
pretend
can't.
it's here.
I cannot. But oh, technical malfunction here. Let me get you back in so I can hear you. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk was one of the people who had said that, and then an author before him, and I think that's left out of a lot of the nervous system regulation work. The mind cannot receive instruction to do cognitive shifting or thought work or emotional work if it's in survival. And in survival is a lot of times experiencing cognitive distortions where I'm picking up threat, but there really isn't. If you raise your voice, you're a man, chances are, because of my history of abuse from men, starting from very little, I'm going to have some type of reaction. It's going to take some work for me to actually understand and reframe that in a way that my friend Richard is not a threat. Even if I know Irish men can get loud, I was married to one. So,
Okay.
just like Italian women can get loud, right? But but is it necessarily a threat? Is it something wrong? Is it a natural response? And how can I work through that? But if the survival mechanisms going through the parts of the brain that are affected by trauma, which there are four main ones that are literally damaged, it's a physical injury, and a lot of people don't know that. If that's not corrected, then I can't hear. I can't hear the work that needs to come next. So felt safety, breathing practices, that type of thing. A lot of people think that these are simply regulation, but they're not. The oxygen, a lot of us trauma survivors have never taken a deep breath. I remember the first time I was told to breathe and it felt foreign to me. My rib cage was locked. My diaphragm felt. I was actually in a yoga class because I was into fitness and I felt okay in my body, but my mind was still doing the same stuff that it always had. It caused problems in relationships, problem with parenting, problems with authority at work, especially with my women bosses. Go figure, because I have mother trauma and I kept projecting this trauma onto women friendships and everybody that was in my life. That cannot be changed through felt safety. So, felt safety is the beginning for me to be receptive, to hear the cognitive shifting, pay attention to my emotions, embrace the physical sensations in my body as merely signals for me to redirect those thoughts and form new beliefs. Esther Hicks says, a belief is just a thought I keep thinking. Men are dangerous is just a thought that I kept thinking. Women might be nice, but it's because they want something and they're going to hold it over my head later in a transactional type of way, is a thought that I kept thinking, which became a belief. So, in short, felt safety is designed to create presence, consciousness in the body, being with myself so I can hear the thoughts that lead to the beliefs that need to be restructured.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, there's a lot in that, Mia. I can't wait to listen to this back so I can process that.
We could do another hour.
Yeah. What are the most common patterns you see in people who are high functioning on the outside but completely running on empty underneath? And what are the things that finally crack that open, do you think?
The the most significant patterns is really an extreme. I'm going to use polyvagal theory by Dr. Stephen Porges. Even though it's theoretical, it has a lot of debate because it involves evolutionary theory versus creation theory, et cetera, et cetera. But I really found it helpful when I studied that neuroscience. It really was a life-changing moment for me in my recovery. And what we find is that there's this part of the nervous system called the vagal nervous system, and it has nerve endings in the face and in the brain, and the nerve goes behind the throat. And there's a front side, the ventral side, a back side called the dorsal side, like dorsal fin of a fish. And the nerve endings go all through the chest cavity, abdomen, and then into the gut. This is why we call the gut the second brain. And if the brain up here isn't healthy, usually the gut is not healthy, and vice versa. The communication runs from the body to the brain more than the brain to the body with this particular system. And it's responsible for the fight, flight, or freeze reflexes. Notice I did not put
Mm.
fawn in there. Fawn is a behavioral aspect, but it's not a physiological aspect of this connection. It's a behavioral adjustment to threat. But fight, flight, freeze, those, and then of course we have two more: shut down and collapse. And those are exactly what they sound like. And if you imagine a hill, we're triggered and we go immediately into fight. And then if we can't fight it, we run away. And if we can't fight or run, then what happens is the being has this wonderful internal mechanism called freeze, and it's a conservation of energy. And so what I see most of the time is somebody stuck in fight, freeze, fight, freeze, fight, freeze, fight, freeze, which conversely, nervous system regulation actually looks like this. It looks like, well, joy, consciousness, mindfulness, compassion. Oh, what did that person do when they cut me off on the highway? Okay, but now I'm down to, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty peaceful. My outlook is hopeful. And oh, my spouse didn't help me with the dishes. This is emotional regulation. A lot of people are thinking we need to achieve this calm state all the time to be regulated. It's just it's scientifically inaccurate. What we're doing is we're feeling all the emotions, but we're not going up into freeze. That's emotional regulation. A lot of people are in the anger, which is great. It's mobilizing energy. It says, I can and I will achieve a solution. But more people are in that freeze, and they're just not responsive. Their face, their emotional affect on their face is just, flat. Their lips don't move. There hardly any energy coming from them. They feel really heavy, that type of thing. And that is designed to conserve energy. So fight or freeze. That's usually what I'm seeing. That's usually what it is. Yes.
Yeah, very good. I like it. Okay, you spoke about trying therapy and some somatic approaches yourself, and something that didn't necessarily fully shift the deeper patterns. So, what does your method do differently that those couldn't?
Mhm. You're right, Richard. The first time I saw any type of mental health professional, I was 11 years old, and they told my mom I would be dead by 25 by my own hands or the hands of someone else. Yeah. What a prognosis I just got on the planet, And I heard this prognosis, which was an additional trauma because I believed that for a long, long time. And as I approached my 25th birthday, I also anticipated my death. That was a message that I lived with for a long, long time.
Yeah, well,
Uh, the therapy, the tell me your first memory is what I was asked, in my early 20s. And when I thought about that first memory, I said, well, I don't want to talk about that. Well, this is necessary in order for you. So I did. I started to talk about the early times in my life, what I could remember because I had a lot of trauma and amnesia, what I could remember, and I felt worse leaving this place than I did not feel better. I didn't have any instruction of what to do with this emotional upheaval. It felt like I ran a truck through caliche gravel and I had all this dust and I had absolutely no way to. And so I did what I have done since I was 11. I went and I found alcohol. I went and I found cocaine. I went and I jumped into abusive relationships as a way to self destruct. It made me worse and not better. That's not everybody's story. Therapy has a place. I'm grateful for it. It's necessary at times when people come to me as a private coach. I do a mental health screening. If it's out of my scope, I connect them with external psychiatry, therapy resources, a psychologist, et cetera, et cetera. They have to be a certain, ready to receive the coaching model, right? And this is for anybody listening that is a coach, this is your ethical responsibility to be able to screen for something. I take care of people that have personality disorders, but I don't necessarily do that anymore in the coaching model. That needs to be done with the psychiatry or psychology model. So the other thing is in my late 20s, I got into fitness. I was 5'1" when my youngest son was 2 and 200 pounds, still using the excuse of baby, weight. And it wasn't true. I switched from trying not to drink so much. I switched to food, which is pretty common with survivors. We jump from compulsive behavior to compulsive behavior. And what these things really are nervous system soothers because we were never taught how to self soothe by an anchoring, present, emotionally available parent. And so, excuse me, when I got into fitness and sports nutrition, it saved my life. It saved my life. I thought I was going to be there forever. I felt grounded. I felt powerful. I felt healthy, but I still had these patterns in my brain and my mind. It not being able to shift, incredibly reactive about everything. When I went into work for a performance review, for instance, and I saw three of my leadership team there, it felt like I was in trouble. Like that's not a natural response for an adult professional to feel like a child in an adult meeting for a professional review. So that was something that needed to shift in my brain. Everybody responds to different things. I know people that have responded to ayahuasca, psilocybin, which has incredible science to back it up, microdosing for ADD, and other things. But the model that I do is meet people where they're at, take them through some really simple, like 20 minutes of your day, simple nervous system regulation practices. And then most of the time in 3 or 4 weeks, they start to come out of that. And then you work on cognitive restructuring, belief overhaul, and then how to monitor cheerfully, vigilantly, monitor our thinking and then shift it. And I use the analogy. Have you been to New York, Richard? Have you been to New York
I
City?
haven't, not yet. It's on
Put
my
it
to-do list.
Put it on your list. Yes. Well, they have the famous, subway system and over by the D train. They have a schematic imprinted in the cement, and it looks much like, I would think, what the brain would be doing when we have all of these thoughts. We have 65 to 95,000 thoughts a day, but I cannot list all of them that I had yesterday for you right now. So part of mindfulness is being able to pay attention to the internal dialogue that we're having. And most of us have a very shaming, destructive dialogue from abusers when we were younger or in relationships. So that's a really big missing part, I think, today as we have shifted towards somatic. I also experienced emotional freedom tapping by Dr. Norton Ortner in the 90s. And I just happened to stumble upon that. A woman in the gym, older woman that I did a class with, noticed me crying in the bathroom because of something that happened in my relationship. I go figure. And and she came to me and she said, "Have you ever tried, meditation?" Well, I was so hypervigilant because of physical abuse and sexual abuse that I couldn't close my eyes, not even in my own room. And so when she taught me this emotional freedom tapping, and there's a huge science to it. It's really good for people who have the startle reflex or they can't relax, they can't close their eyes. Not every person should be closing their eyes. This can be
Hmm.
really dangerous for certain individuals. I was one of those people. So when I did emotional freedom tapping, I had some really significant shifts, but still, the beliefs did not change. When we get down to the roots of the tree, which is our life, it all comes from what I believe. Thomas Aurelius said, whatever I believe, yes or no, that is what I'm right. If I believe, or if I don't believe, then that's the way that I'm going to move the rest of my life. Long answer. Yes.
Long answer, yes. I love it. Okay. Yeah, I do a bit of EFT, and I do teach a little bit of EFT, depending on the person. It's something I actually picked up and learned while learning about hypnotherapy. What do you think are the results that stand out to you? The ones that remind you on a hard day why you do this work?
The first thing that came to mind, Richard, was a beautiful woman, childhood trauma survivor, domestic violence, narcissistic abuse survivor, and short of a year, 8 or 9 months or so, she went through my approach coaching with me one on one, which I find is really the best way. Some things should not be shared at a group level. That's just my experience, especially when we talk about sexual trauma. And believe it or not, women are more open about having experienced sexual trauma than men are. So a lot of times that's not really good to do in a group. It's better one on one to provide safety and a direct focus for that experience. This woman had a lot of that in her history too. And coming out of that and changing her belief system and learning how to listen and redirect her thoughts, which eventually, because what we think creates a feeling, and then our feelings and thoughts jump back and forth to create a momentum that will spur this emotion to drive us toward either change or further shut down. And so she was shut down and was mobilized with her energy towards shifting change. And what she shared with me is that she was a musician, but she's not encouraged to play instruments. She was raised in a home where you're seen and never heard, and her needs were denied constantly. Need for physical affection, hearing "I love you," sharing dreams and thoughts. There was nobody around for her to do that. And she recently completed a musical album, or she recorded an album. She's a musician. Well, she's actually a vocalist, but she recorded an album of all original songs that she has written, and she's going to release that album soon. But all of the songs are about her transformation through what she's learned about herself. So this is really going to touch a lot of listeners to hear and just in writing that music, it it was so cathartic for her. And we actually have our last session next week, and she'll be moving on. And that's one of the beautiful things, Richard, is what I tell people when I consult with them is people work with me and they leave. I don't want you to be with me for 10 years. I know a woman when I worked in the clinic, I worked with a woman, she survived the incident where they were it was genocide, right? She survived this horrible incident. Here she is in her late 40s, so she was very little at the time that this happened, and she was on a substance called Haldol, psychotropic medication called Haldol, and she looked like she was numb, not present, not coherent. The doctors took her off of it, and I watched her come to life. She ended up getting married and having children after learning coping strategies, because a lot of people that have experienced trauma like that need ongoing assistance with life skills. But those are the two that stand out in different environments. One was the medical model, and then the other, the coaching model. It's amazing what we can do when our brains aren't in survival, they go into creativity. And that's my experience as well. I'm really a writer. I can't wait to get to that someday. I know we have a lot of things to help us achieve that, but that's communicating and writing really is my creative art. So when I get to do those things, I'm in flow. My younger son is a self-taught musician, and when I see him play music, he is one with an instrument, kind of like when we watch Jimmy Page play the guitar from Led Zeppelin.
Yes,
Jimmy
yes,
Page is blurry. He and the guitar are one. That's the brain being
yes.
in a flow state with both hemispheres operating simultaneously. We can't really get there when the brain is in survival.
Very good. I love it. The arts in general, wonderful piece for healing, I suppose. And again, not something I thought I'd be interested in it in myself. Didn't have a great start to my education, and I was very nicely asked to leave school, and I was dyslexic, so that was my academia up until I was 30 years of age. But for writing, I thought it was something I could never do, and I thought I was cheating when I first went to college at 30 years of age. I found a program called Dragon Dictate, and you put a headset on, you talk, and it types, and that was the start of everything that helped me all the way through college and forever since. So I don't write, I dictate. So I do have books published, but I talk, and I just talk and talk and talk and talk, and I can go back then and edit it when it's done. Or I do crafts. You might see a few bits of signs and
I
bits
do.
around me here in the background. So that I'm in my man cave is my studio, and one half is a little workshop for a lot of woodwork and craft and stuff like that. And poetry was something I didn't think I'd ever be interested in, but again, really healing. And it's about going into that zone, isn't it? And being able to just switch off from the world and create. It's powerful. Okay, so I'm going to go off script slightly, but I love this question. I love this question. If work came with a warning label on the bottle, what would it say?
If work,
If
work,
work, yeah, if your work came with a warning label on the bottle, what would it say?
if my work came with a warning label on the bottle, my job, my work, what I do, what would it say? Take care of you first. Take care of you first. I live what I teach. I live what I teach. That's the whole reason I have the model that I do, is I live what I teach. I have done so many things that don't work, to the point of wanting to end my life so many times to get relief. And if I don't do that, I'm no good to you. Take care of yourself first.
Yeah, very, very good. Self love and self work definitely always has to come first. I experienced that the hard way many years ago when I started off in social care and thought I could save the world and looked after everybody else and not myself.
Yes.
And it wasn't very quickly to kick in, but when it kicked in hard, and it was a tough one to swallow my pride and have to admit. As much as I gave out, I needed to stop and start with myself.
Yes.
What's the expression? You can't fill from an empty cup.
It's very true, and it's counterintuitive for especially childhood trauma survivors, anybody who has had, trauma as a child. It's counterintuitive to put self first, because we put preoccupied parents first. We put siblings that we had to be mini parents for first. We put the other person all the time first. That's just something that we were taught to do, is self-abandon. And so getting into trauma recovery and hearing, well, you got to take care of yourself. A lot of us survivors are like, well, what the hell does that mean? And so when I say I take care of myself first, that means I'm doing my breathing practices. I'm doing where are my thoughts? If I experience some type of an emotional reaction, I give oxygen to the brain, and then I think, okay, what is this? Why is it here? What is it telling me? What do I need right now? Is this accurate? How much of this belongs to whatever I feel the person just did to me? And how much of it was already there that I've carried in my life experience? And then I ride a motorcycle. That's my what I would call therapy, because you can't multitask on two wheels. And I did learn that the hard way. And you can't have this emotional upheaval and overthinking happening while you're on a motorcycle. And so when I get on my bike with my husband, who that's what brought us together is motorcycle. When we do this together, it's that flow we are talking about where I'm fully in my body and I'm fully present, fully conscious to the now moment. And in that state, I'm not thinking about the what my mom did or didn't do, or what my ex didn't do, or what type of perceived failures that I have, or the potential limitations on my success compared to other people. I'm not thinking about any of that. I'm just in the moment. So that's what I mean when I say taking care of myself. And also avoiding it as much refined sugar as possible. You know, a lot of people might think that that is nothing to be concerned about, but with eating disorders that develop from childhood trauma, especially with a mother, the thing that can happen is I'm eating so much of that that I get, you know, this inflammation or this insulin response that kind of feels like I'm drunk, and then I go to sleep, and then I'll sleep a lot to avoid the realities of life because inside I feel insecure and incapable about how to handle them, which is also a common thread with childhood survivors.
Yeah,
So I take
very
care of
good.
myself first, so I have a full cup.
Yeah,
And people say, "Mia, how do you do what you do all day?" Because sometimes, even though I'm creating things that, you know, courses and online communities and things like that, which I'm really excited about, Richard, but I still do a lot of the one-on-one models. So I'm sitting right here in my office a lot listening to other people's experiences. And even though I don't encourage a play by play of traumatic stuff, it will come out from time to time. And a lot of times people share that with me for the first time they've ever shared it with anybody. And so I do have some of that going on. How do you, well, you know, gosh, that's got to be awful. It's not. It's really not. As long as I take care of myself and my energy is right and I have the boundaries necessary to separate your experience from my personal experience. I'm not taking it on. I'm not responsible for your outcome. I'm not focused on that. I'm just meeting you right where you're at and then trusting the powers that be to guide the whole session. So that's a good way to take care of ourselves too.
very good, very good. I know we're running short on time, so just two more questions for
Sure.
you. If you could go back and sit across from your younger self, say, you know, late teens, early 20s, in the thick of it, what would you say to her? And did any part of her already know that she was going to make it?
So I'm going to answer that backwards. I was never secure about going to make it. As a matter of fact, even to this day, and this is for those people out there who are absolutely hopeless, even today, I do a lot of my life scared to death, but I do it anyway. And as I perform these micro experiments, is what they're called, and the end result is not what my brain fears, the neuroplasticity, the neural pathway is now in motion to have me believe that a different response or a different possibility is there. So that's the first thing. The second thing, what would I tell her? You don't have to die to get relief. Just because you feel, I honestly, up until my 30s, in my darkest moments, I would cry and say this out loud. And this is the first time I'm ever going to say it, Richard. That boy that is there, I would tell her, that boy that is there, it's not your fault. And in the future, you're going to learn how to parent yourself. And you're not going to be at the mercy of approval or disapproval. That void you're going to learn how to fill with your own love, self acceptance, acknowledgement, and power. You're going to be successful in everything that you've survived, and everything that you will survive for a few more years is going to be used to help so many. That's what.
That's powerful stuff, man. Yeah. If only, if only we had the opportunity to be able, huh? Okay. I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I didn't get to spend much time with you. I know you're very, very busy, and I do really appreciate you taking the time to come and sit with me today and share your experience with me. Tell us, where can we find you? Tell us about your courses. I want you to just tell me everything. So if anybody's ever looking for you, they want to get in touch with you, throw it all out there to me.
Sure, Richard. First things first, thank you for having me. If you if you would like to meet again, I am open to that. I just full transparency here for your listeners and your viewers. I have an appointment that actually moved up, which cut our time short. So I regret that. It's something not within my control. But maybe they'll comment on your content. Maybe they'll comment and let you know and whether or not they would like to see more of me on your channels. And so that might be a good way. Then we can schedule something in the future, and maybe we can schedule a 2-hour slot and just talk and see what
Sounds good.
comes up, and then we can use our
Yeah,
technology, right, to break it up into smaller bits for people who don't want a full 2-hour conversation. But I'm open to coming back if that's what the people who follow you would like. I am open to that. Anybody can find me. All you have to do is type my name, Mia Vivoni, into your browser, and all of my stuff will come up. Full disclosure, I am no good at Instagram. I really need to get better at that, but I do have some, Facebook following and that type of thing. My website is miavivoni.com. Very simple. The spelling, I'm sure, will be in your description of the episode later. I have one-on-one coaching spots available, usually only one or two a month available because I stay full, even though I have not advertised in over 6 years, which is terrific. But I also have a course. It's a 12-week intensive called the Untriggered Woman. Yes, it is marketed towards women, but if you are a man who needs help, just send me an email, hit me on a DM somewhere, or comment on Richard's stuff, and I will get back to you. I have a YouTube channel. I have a podcast called the Untriggered Woman Podcast. And I'm going to have men on there too. Probably you, Richard. I would love that. Because we could talk about what it really means. You have fully healed and I have untriggered. We know some of those physiological aspects are going to be with us as survivors, but they don't need to run our lives.
very good. Mia, thank you so much.
I'm
And
honored.
to everybody listening, if something landed with you today, come and let us know. Leave it in the comments, and yeah, we'll get in touch with you. Mia, thank you once again.
Thank you,
Absolute
Richard.
pleasure. I'd love to touch base with you. And if nobody told you today, the Mouse Williams loves you. This is the
Thank
Ruby Hill
you.
podcast.
Thank you, Richard.